and welcome to our meeting of Monday, October 21st, 2024, at 9 a.m. I'll ask for the clerk to call the meeting to order.
It's moved by Councillor Williams, seconded by Councillor Gaindon, that the meeting of the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas and Glengarry be hereby called to order.
All those in favor? Motion is carried. Before we start today's SDG Council meeting, we gather for today's SDG County Council's meeting with heavy hearts. This morning, we wish to honor the life and legacy of a remarkable leader, a devoted public servant, a dear friend to many in our community, former SDG County's Warden and North Glengarry Mayor, Chris McDonnell. As many of you know, Chris passed away last week. Chris's career in public service spanned nearly 2 decades, leaving an indelible impact on the Township of North Glengarry and SDG counties. His service as a councillor, deputy mayor, and ultimately as mayor reflects his deep dedication to our community. He was selected as warden of SDG counties in 2009. His time in office was characterized by his unwavering commitment to improving the lives of his constituents and his unique ability to connect with people from all walks of life. Whether you were a fellow council member or a local resident, Chris could easily put you at ease, often with a joke about his beloved Red Wings. As a leader, Chris was tireless in his pursuit of a better future for North Glengarry and SDG counties. He worked diligently on initiatives such as securing water for Maxville and advancing the environmental assessment of the Alexandria Lagoons, ensuring our region was well prepared for the future. But beyond the policies and projects, it was Chris's personal touch, his kindness, approachability, and humor that endeared him to everyone he met. We remember not only his achievements, but also his humanity. As warden, mayor, and friend, Chris was a presence at countless community events, always finding the time to support his neighbors, often attending multiple gatherings in a single day. His impact was far-reaching, and his absence will be deeply felt. Let us please take a moment of silence to honor the memory of Chris McDonnell, a man who truly embodied public service and community spirit. Thank you, everyone. Just on to some happier news. We do have a small presentation to make today before beginning our council meeting. So, on behalf of SDG Counties Council, I would like to congratulate a member of our community who recently made the decision to hang up his notepad and camera after 36 years as a local journalist. Todd Hamilton began his journalism career in the late 1980s, covering local sports. His travels took him from his home in Dalhousie Mills to the Glengarry News, the Chesterville Record, and ultimately the Cornwall Standard Freeholder. Todd's talent as a writer, his pleasant demeanor, and dedication to his craft will be missed in our region. Please accept our heartfelt congratulations on a job well done. All the best in your retirement. Todd, if you can please come forward, Todd. It's like he's never been here before. So, Todd, in recognition of 36 years of outstanding dedication to journalism, your commitment to keeping the residents of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry informed through in-depth coverage of council meetings, local sports, and the personalities of our region is truly commendable. Your contributions at the Chesterville Record, Glengarry News, Standard Freeholder have enriched our community. Congratulations on an exceptional career. There's always this little bit of jealousy, eh? When you congratulate someone on retiring when you're on Freedom 82. So the adoption of the agenda.
It's moved by Councillor Guindon, seconded by Councillor Williams, that Council approve the agenda.
Any discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor? The motion is carried. Are there any disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof? Seeing none, adoption of the minutes.
It's moved by Councillor Williams, seconded by Councillor Guindon, that the minutes of the meeting of the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry, including the in-camera minutes held September 16th, 2024, be adopted as circulated.
Any discussion on the minutes? All those in favor? Motion is carried. I don't think I've ever gone through all the way to items under the consent agenda.
It's moved by Councillor Fraser, seconded by Councillor Williams, that all items listed under the consent agenda section of the agenda be received for information purposes.
Any discussion on those? All those in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move on to boards and committees. Joint liaison. Had we met? Yes, we did.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Warden. We did meet, and it was seemingly, in my mind, a while ago, but I do believe that we had a presentation from from Chief Lister, from Rebecca Russell, and from Melissa Morgan, as well as Lisa Smith. And Lisa Smith had spoken as in her new role, and we had provided notice that communication would be important, or continued level of communication would be important with the Cornwall City Council, as we are partners with the Cornwall, and moves that affect Cornwall, strictly affect Cornwall, but they also do affect us in some way whenever staff are moving around, and levels of comfort that we have as SDG County Council with the people that were in place. But that level of comfort, we assured Cornwall that that level of comfort will remain, and we will remain as good partners as we negotiate and work through the challenges we have with the upcoming budget. I believe that somewhat encapsulates that, Mr. Warden.
Yes, thank you. Library Board.
We have an upcoming meeting this Thursday.
Okay, thank you. We just had a Police Services Board. I'll ask the chair to speak. Councillor McGillis.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. We talked about 3 policies that were presented to the board for approval regarding an update bylaw and board policies. And the 3 were detachment commander, selection and performance. Second policy in the document was detachment board member code of conduct. And also the third one is reporting to a local board. Under the Community Safe and Policy Act 2019, the SDG OPP detachment board must establish its own rules and procedures for performing its duties. And these policies has been updated to reflect new legislative changes. And I know that later on on the agenda, Madam CEO will be speaking with an update on the report regarding our annual billing, which has a significant increase on this upcoming budget. So she'll be talking about that for questions and comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Landry.
Not in reference to Councillor McGillis, I'd just like to backtrack back to the library. So we do have our meeting coming up this Thursday, but we did have our reading program where we met the author on October the 7th. It was very well attended. I'd like to congratulate staff on decorating the hall. Took place in the Avonmore, North Stormont Place, but again, it was an outstanding evening, and I think they could be commended on their hard work. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad you changed that because you didn't see the dirty look Rebecca gave you. So, Eastern Ontario Health Unit, Councillor Williams.
Thank you. Yes, we just had a meeting actually at the Alexandria office just last week. One of the really interesting things is we took a tour of, because they own the whole building on Anique Street, And there used to be, in part of the building, there used to be a restaurant called Maggie's, which has since closed. So the health unit has gutted that side of the building. It's 3,000 square feet. And so we got a tour of it, and plans are in the works to working with Glengarry Memorial Hospital in order to be able to provide some services in that space, some healthcare, whether it be a clinic or doctor's offices or a youth mental health and addiction hub. There are various ideas that are being tossed around, and but it will serve the community well, whatever goes in there, and hopefully take some much needed pressure off of the emergency room. So that's good news. In our meeting, we talked about the respiratory season is here. Vaccines, I think, have just been received by clinics and pharmacies, and people can get both the COVID vaccine and the flu vaccine at the same time. The vaccine for RSV for all babies under 1 year of age is a big deal. This is new, and it promises to keep a lot of babies out of emergency rooms. So that's really good news. COVID tests will be available at pharmacies and health units, but really, what are they calling it, Martin? It's you only test if you think you have it. Is that correct?
The COVID test is going to be for those people that are going to need pre-existing conditions where they're going to need treatment if they have COVID. So the average person gets COVID now. It doesn't really matter if it's COVID or flu or a cold. It's the same. You isolate while you're contagious. You wear a mask if you have to go in public. So they're not really looking to test normal people, but anybody who is at high risk and needs treatment if they do get COVID, the tests are available for them.
Yeah. So that's a bit of a shift, and something should take. It just is a more common virus. That's all it is. Pandemic preparedness is being embedded into the strategic plan. I talked about the strategic plan last time, and because it's been determined that health units just simply aren't prepared for another pandemic if it was to occur right away. So pandemic preparedness is being embedded in the plan. And another piece of good news is that there's a mobile mental health and addiction unit that is going to be established in Cornwall and SDG for 3 years. And this is a big deal. It's being 100% funded through the government. And I think it's the only unit, I think other than, he mentioned Perth or something like that. There's 2 others, so this is only one of 3 across the province, and it will serve the region well, because what it'll do is, let's say somebody gets admitted into hospital for, let's say, a drug overdose. They get treated, and then they get released back into the public with no follow-up or treatment afterwards. And so this mobile unit will actually do that kind of follow-up. So it'll fill those gaps that are currently not being addressed. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Glenstore Dunn Lodge, Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, through you. Had a meeting on September the 18th. Fairly quiet meeting, nothing too exciting, but a couple of things. Occupancy reports are good. We're consistently where we need to be. We're progressing on staffing, especially in the PSW area. It's a little tougher for RNs and so forth, but it's progressing, and we're using less agency staff than we normally do. A little bit of concern that ministry is there inspecting a lot, like sometimes spending most of a month there every day with a few people and kind of watching over people's shoulders. Seem to have kind of gone, in my opinion, I may not be an expert, but seem to have gone maybe a little too far into the other way from where they were during COVID. But anyway, we're working through that. I think that's likely about all I have in there. It wasn't anything too earth-shattering in that meeting. But.
Okay, thank you. St. Lawrence River Institute, Councillor Gaydon.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Just a quick update. So I've been part of a working group at the River Institute for the last few months as they look to update their procedural bylaw. So I'm happy to say that that was approved at the meeting last week, and it provides a transparent and easily usable mechanism for members to bring items to the agenda, and it's in compliance with Ontario's new not-for-profit regulations.
Okay, thank you. Raisin South Nation Water Source Protection Committee, Teresa Bergeron, who joins us by Zoom.
There's been no meeting yet. I think there's one scheduled for the month of November.
Okay, thank you. No municipal advisory. Algonquin? No. Eastern Ontario Agri-Food Networks, Councillor Williams.
Thank you. The executive director, Louis Bellon, has resigned his position at the network. So this is going to present some new challenges to the organization while they are going to be having an interim person step in temporarily while they search for a new executive director. So things are kind of status quo at the moment, not a lot going on while this transition happens. Thank you.
Thank you. Regional Incentives Program Approvals Committee, no meeting. Rural Education, no meeting. Social Development Council.
Yes, just a quick update. That's on my phone here. The 2023-24 Wellbeing Report Card has been completed and shared with partners and councils. This includes a celebration of community achievements over the last fiscal year. Also, the Social Development Council's proposal to St. Lawrence College's Project Management Graduate Certificate Program was accepted for their capstone course. A group of 5 students will analyze data they surveyed from over 60 community agencies and will assess the current state of service accessibility in SDG, Akwesasne, and Cornwall and identify gaps and barriers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. SDG Forest Working Group.
No meeting, but I might make comment, and I'm sure everybody's well aware that there's quite a bit of forestry work going on in Somerstown Trails, and the weather's good, and I just wondered if maybe Phil would, and he's going to be up later anyway, but maybe give us an update on how it's progressing.
Sure. Okay, so moving on to key information reports. Pre-purchase of nursery trees for regenerative planting at SDG 2021. Welcome, Ben and Phil.
Maybe what we'll do, we'll have Phil start with the update on Somerstown Forest and the work there while I load up a little bit of a presentation for what we're talking about in a couple seconds.
Sure.
Yeah, so at Somerstown, the contractor started early October, and he's got quite a few truckloads of wood out already. The site is fully closed down to the public, just as a matter of health and safety, and we're monitoring the site pretty well daily to ensure compliance with our harvesting standards and the standards within the contract. The contractor is doing excellent work. The site is holding up beautifully, and with the nice weather that we've been having, it's going really great. So,
Okay. Go ahead, Ben.
Great, thank you. And so I'll just lead the discussion here, and we've got Phil here to be able to answer any questions. And really the purpose of why we're talking about this today is just to keep council in the loop in terms of what's happening in some forestry stuff and looking at pre-purchasing some trees for next year. So I'll start off, and this is, as I put this slide together, I realized how ridiculous it sounds, but in 2019-2020, white pine was harvested at SDG 2020, or 2021. I knew I was going to screw that up. So this is a piece of forest property that the county owns just northeast of Monkland. So that's the area we're talking about. Natural regeneration of white pine does not occur in stands. So often whenever we do a harvest, and again, Phil is the expert here, so he can better describe it, but often when we do a harvest, we rely on natural regeneration as you kind of clear out the forest and create some space for the mature trees. The younger trees start growing from underneath, And unfortunately, with white pine, that just doesn't happen. So to regenerate white pine, we need to plant trees with nursery stock to be able to keep that white pine stand going for the next 100 years. So to prepare for planting, we've been actively managing the site for the past 2 years, and I'm taking credit for Phil's hard work, but Phil in 2023 organized mechanical site preparation of that site, and I'll show a picture of what that looked like after that site preparation was done. And then in 2024, this year, we did some chemical treatment to be able to prepare for the planting. So this is a view of the site after the mechanical site prep was completed, and really what that consists of is actually logging skidders going through with blades, and do they have plows on the back too? Rakes, thank you, rakes on the back. And it's the intent is to disturb the soil and create some planting space for the new plants by turning over that soil. Good, okay, I'm not making things up, that's great. And then, of course, this year coming back through and actually cleaning out some areas with chemical treatment to be able to reduce the competition for the trees that are planted. So next year our plan is to plant approximately 24,000 container stock white trees at the site. But to be able to be prepared for that, we do need to put those seedlings into production at this time to be able to have them ready for next spring. Excuse me. So what we're doing through this report and just making sure council is informed, we are reserving these trees through the Ferguson Forest Centre, which was the lowest price for this work. For these trees, and getting them started for next year. It looks like we will have some funds available to pay for this, for the trees, just from surplus funds, so we actually can start offsetting some costs and help to, I guess, spread that work out over a 2 budget cycles. So I think all good news, but we just really want to make sure council's informed and be available to answer any questions that council may have on this work.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dencham.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and through you, and thank you. Yeah, very supportive of the great work that's being done there. I'm aware of the fact that there's, I'm going to read this because it's so long, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Growing Canada's Community Canopies grant that was available. I didn't know whether this qualified and whether or not we're able to take advantage of that, because it fundamentally ends up being 50% off the cost of trees.
Yep. So I had looked into that option and contacted an officer from the funding agency. And unfortunately, this type of work, being more silvicultural work, is not covered by them, because the long-term schedule for this will be to harvest it 80 to 100 years from now. And they want trees that are being planted and not being cut.
If I could supplement that, though, too, we are looking into some funding options that may help offset some costs here, but nothing's guaranteed yet. But I think we've got some good opportunities ahead of us that we're anxious to share with council once we get a little bit more of a firmer understanding if this type of work qualifies.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Councillor Fraser.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. So the question is directed to Mr. Duncan. And it's just, I find it very interesting, the comment about the white pine trees don't self-propagate, or am I misunderstanding? And if they needed to be, and I'm not challenging anything, but if they needed to be handled by humans to propagate a forest, did that happen 80 or 100 years ago? Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. So the type of harvest that was done here was a uniform shelterwood, in which we look at crown spacing and the available light. To grow white pine, you want around 40 to 50% crown closure. So that's what's achieved. If you could go back through the photo there. So you see the distribution of those trees on site. In SDG, our soils are so productive that whenever you do open up the site, you end up getting a lot of competition. This could be in the form of other undesirable trees, such as ash, and in some cases, glossy buckthorn, which is an invasive species in our area. At this site, pre-harvest, there was no natural regeneration coming in on site. White pine will regenerate, but not to the desired stocking levels, which is why we go to artificial regeneration through mechanical site prep, chemical site prep, and then planting to ensure that we have proper stocking levels.
Go ahead, subsequent.
No, not a subsequent, just thank you for educating me on that.
Yeah,
thank you.
That's great.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions or comments? So everyone is good with moving ahead with that, just by nods of your heads? Yep, okay, good, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. Biking along county roads, Ben.
Yeah, I'm hoping this this spurs a little bit of discussion around the council table, because not that I think what staff would really be keenly interested in understanding through council is, do they want us to continue on the way we have been managing cycling along county roads, excuse me, to date, or is there a different direction that? Oh, good. Sorry. Or is there a different direction that council would like us to take on this? Cycling touches on a couple different areas. So the two areas I want to speak to from a legal perspective to start is minimum maintenance standards, which I know we talk about quite a bit. Excuse me. We talk about quite a bit when we're talking about maintaining roadways, plowing, filling potholes. That's the kind of thing that drives a lot of the operational activities that transportation departments do. So MMS defines cyclist, the definition under MMS is a portion for cycling is cyclist lanes is a portion of the roadway that has been designed or designated by pavement markings or signage for the preferential or exclusive use of cyclists, or a portion of a roadway that has been designated for the exclusive use of cyclists, thank you so very much, by signage and a physical or marked buffer. So there is a definition for cycling lanes within the MMS, and then from that there are a number of maintenance requirements with respect to snow clearing and things like that, which I would suggest are really driven towards the more urban areas where we see cycling infrastructure and cycling as part of a daily commute into the office. That isn't as common in terms of an observation that we see across SDG. Of course, we have a lot of very dedicated and enthusiastic cyclists, but I would dare say that there are very few cyclists that are actually on county roads or on county shoulders during the winter months whenever there's snow on the ground. So we have been in SDG been paving our shoulders to improve safety for many years. It actually started before I was even here at the county, and those safety enhancements that you get from paving the shoulders are including. What it helps with is a runoff road type of accident. So that's when people lose attention, come off the roadway, and if you don't have that paved shoulder, you lose a little bit of buffer if you end up on a gravel shoulder, and can oftentimes be sucked off of the gravel shoulder and off the roadway. So that's considered a runoff road type of accident. The other thing that it does from a safety perspective is it eliminates a shoulder drop-off. So you have runoff road, but you also can have shoulder drop-off. So in an instance where you have your edge of pavement and then the granular shoulder quite a bit below it, if your car tire goes off the roadway, hits into that, essentially like that rut, it can pull you off the roadway too. So a little bit of a different thing, but similar, type of consequence where you're going, cars taken off the roadway. The other safety improvement that it does provide, of course, and that's really what we're focusing on in this presentation, is the buffer it provides between cyclists that may be using that shoulder and vehicles. Within the Highway Traffic Act, and I do want to make this distinction with council as well, cyclists are motorists. They're considered slow-moving vehicles. They're required to travel on the right side of the lane and follow the rules of the road. But they do have they are legally allowed to be within the lane and take like turning lanes, and function as a vehicle would in the roadway. So at this point, to date within SDG, the counties has not given preferential or exclusive use to cyclists of those shoulders, but that's really what I want to have a good discussion with council about today. As council is likely aware, portions of County Road 2 through South Dundas and South Glengarry are part of the Waterfront Trail. So the Waterfront Trail is a cycling trail that's been identified, which follows essentially the Great Lakes, and it goes across Ontario, and it's something that's promoted. But it consists of separated paths. So the bike path through South Stormont, as an example, is part of the Waterfront Trail. It doesn't necessarily have to be its own bike path. It can be on road, but it is something that's designated and very much promoted across the province. And we do, even here in SDG through tourism, and I know that we have a tourism update coming up later on, we do promote cycling as a tourist attraction in SDG, which, and rightfully so, because it's a beautiful spot to come and tour and enjoy a nice bike ride. So I'll give an example here. This is along the waterfront trail in Glen Walter, and you've got a before and after shot of County Road 2 just before, it's just east of, it's east of Yacht Boulevard, traveling easterly. But prior to the repaving that's happened in that area, the counties and South Glengarry had cyclist markings as well as a rumble strip that had been installed there. After it was repaved, the counties paved the shoulder. South Glengarry installed the cyclist paint markings again, and I don't think they've been installed throughout the entire length of County Road 2 where it's been repaved, but this is an area where it has been. Rumble strips were not reinstated. So the point of this is that I guess I want to point out that cycling infrastructure, like those painted markings on the shoulder, have historically been led and paid for by the local municipality. It's tended to fall under what we deem to be the recreational sphere of jurisdiction, which is often looked after by local municipalities. So that's historically how this has been managed. And the reason, there's been kind of two things that have led to staff wanting to bring this forward for a little bit of a discussion with County Council. One being we've been working with South Dundas, their CAO. There is, through Tim, the CAO, he's identified that there's an active and engaged cycling group that's looking for some improvements along County Road 2 where the waterfront trail is. There's a number of short-term and long-term improvements that South Dundas is interested working with this cycling group and in initiating or having a good discussion with the counties on. One being signage improvements, so just improving like where cyclists are, where they're supposed to be turning to get to maintain themselves along the waterfront trail and to continue to identify the waterfront trail and other, points of interest along the route. The cycling group is very interested in seeing some cycling markings being installed on County Road 2, so that is something that doesn't exist in South Dundas, and are also very interested in painting the shoulder a different color. So you see that often in urban areas where, in big cities, where they will paint their cycling infrastructure a green color, as an example. So they're very interested in that as well. Long-term, what the group would like to see is the widening of the shoulders on County Road 2 west of Iroquois. And I know it's, if you're not out in that area very often, maybe a little bit hard to appreciate. But we have, as you get closer to Cardinal, the canal which is there starts to get very close to the roadway, and then we'll protect the roadway with guide rails. So there's actually not as much of a shoulder as you see along other sections of paved shoulder as you see along other sections of County Road 2, and it's just a function of the platform that we have available there. Unfortunately, we're really bound by the canal. But long term, they're looking at ways to actually widen those shoulders, or would like to see ways to widen that shoulder. So it somewhat begs the question: when do these paved shoulders become exclusive use of cyclists? From staff's perspective, if we start marking shoulders with cycling markings, have some enhanced and improved signage out there, we may be reaching that tipping point where we are trying to make it an exclusive use of cyclists, which is, from our perspective, isn't a bad thing. It's just making sure that we have a good understanding of who's responsible for what and who's paying for what. And I don't think from either the county or local municipalities' perspective, we necessarily, it's got to be done, so we're happy to work together to get it done, but let's just make sure it's clear and consistent across SDG in terms of how we take that approach. The other benefit of having it exclusive use of cyclists, and this is a challenge we always see in South Glengarry with the ribbon development that exists along County Road 2 and South Glengarry, is there's a lot of demand for parking space. So we get some vehicles that will park in the shoulder where cyclists are tending to use the shoulder to cycle. In our discussions with the OPP, they cannot, as long as that parked vehicle is not interfering with the regular flow of traffic, because it's not designated exclusively for cyclists, they can't issue tickets. So they won't issue tickets, which I understand why, and it's not a priority for them to be out there issuing tickets, but there's just no enforcement that can be can be done out there. So we have historically created, essentially, we have a stock letter which says, we put into windshields that says, it's a courtesy letter. Can you please, next time, please not park here because it's getting in the way of cyclists. But there's no kind of teeth behind that either. So, but if we do get into the realm of identifying it for exclusive use of cyclists, then we can get ticketing under the HTA because it is interfering with the flow of cyclist traffic in that designated space. So we're getting into bylaws, and also I would suggest if we're getting into kind of that realm of formality with cycling lanes, that we also include seasonal closures of those cycling lanes so that we don't have to monitor and maintain them in the wintertime, which I think is a very reasonable approach. When I talk to some of my colleagues across Ontario who have wrestled with the same thing, some are, feel very confident that's a reasonable approach to take, where others are still concerned that it exposes their municipalities to some liability. So, my perspective is I think that that's a reasonable approach, and it's kind of consistent with what we actually see out there anyway. So then the question also becomes, who pays for the above? Is it something that the counties plays a role in? Because not only are we looking at markings and signage, but it's not a requirement under the MMS, but I think it would be reasonable to expect that there's an enhanced level of sweeping, as an example, because that's a concern that we get even today. When they're not made for the exclusive use of cyclists, you probably have to get into some routine of sweeping those shoulders, as well as probably monitoring and looking at fixing potholes and fixing cracks in a more timely manner than you normally would on the traveled portion of the roadway, where cars and car tires have a little bit more forgiveness built into them compared to a road cycle tire that's less than an inch thick. So, the question becomes, who pays for the above? How do we manage that? And do we want to get into the formality of agreements if we are working with local municipalities to provide these exclusive cycling lanes across on some of our county roads? And the other one, before I guess we get to that discussion point, is just to bring this to Council's attention as well. I think we're all aware of the tragedy that occurred on County Road 2. So we've been working closely with staff from South Stormont to talk about enhancements and improvements to cycling safety through South Stormont as well. And some of the things that county staff have been supporting is some speed studies along County Road 2, as well as some of the local roads that are run parallel to County Road 2, and doing some traffic and cyclist counting as well, just to get a better understanding of the volume of traffic that's using County Road 2, particularly, and I'm speaking exclusively for the section of County Road 2 between Long Sault and Ingleside. Just for council's information, the waterfront trail does not isn't identified through that section. The waterfront trail actually uses the parkway, but that being said, we can appreciate, I think, from both our perspectives, that just because the waterfront trail goes through the parkway, if someone is interested in traveling between Long Sault and Ingleside, they're not necessarily going to kind of backtrack or use the parkway to travel between the two. It's not the quickest route. The quickest route is along the roads that parallel County Road 2 and that County Road 2 corridor. So what we're really kind of having a lot of discussion on is how do we guide cyclists to Manning and Colonial Drive, and how do we improve the crossing of County Road 2 at Hoople Bridge, because that's a pinch point for all those cyclists that are traveling between the two, and it's unavoidable that you're going to need to cross County Road 2 if you're using that corridor. So what we're recommending, and I think my understanding is staff from South Stormont are also bringing a similar report forward at their next council meeting, is having South Stormont lead an engagement with a qualified cycling safety consultant, just to provide a little more best practices and guidance, because there's a lot of great ideas that are available to us. Things like flexible bollards, delineators, and rumble strips, and increasing, designating it exclusively for cyclists, painting. Those are all fantastic ideas. But what we think we really want to understand is how do we best approach that? There's a lot of great practices out there, and we want to make sure we're picking things that work maybe in the short term as well as the long term, because long term there is, a vision for a separated cycling path. But I think we all also recognize that, South Stormont doesn't have control of that land right now, and it's quite an investment as well. So it's not something that can happen tomorrow or next year. So let's figure out a way to improve the safety right now. And so what I'm bringing forward to council as well in this report is just identifying that we're, with council's support, we're suggesting that we, in the transportation budget, include some funds to support that work if it is something that is approved to proceed through South Stormont, because the Hoople Creek crossing involves traffic. It involves potentially some modifications to the bridge depending on what we're doing, and I think that there's no reason why the county can't have a role or shouldn't be playing a little bit of a financial role in helping to work through that process. So with that, I'll turn it over to council and look for some comments or help to guide a little bit of a discussion.
Okay, Ben, thanks for your report. Councillor McGillis.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Ben, for your report. I think this is very important. I think that the short-term solutions are very, very achievable with county support. I think that the solution of building an extension of the off-road multi-use path will require some long-term agreements, various land agreements, development of detailed construction specification, and of course the money, millions of dollars would cost to build a multi-use path from the areas that are lacking, which is Long Sault to Ingleside. I think it's important that we all work together, and I like some of the ideas that were achieved or will be, hopefully, if we get the support. And we'll be directed from our recreational director, Kevin Amelot, in terms of how to move forward. And we hope that everything comes to fruition. We're really coming to budget for the municipality, but I hope that we can get some money from the counties to help us out with the consulting and maybe other things like that. So it's important that we all work together on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor St. Pierre.
Thank you, and through you, Warden. So your report does talk about South Dundas and the initiatives and the discussions we've had with the various cyclist groups. One of the things that came to light is we have up to, and I was kind of surprised by this number, up to 15,000 cyclists that actually goes through the county system alone. Which was very surprising to us. So that kind of enhanced the reason why we believe at the local municipality that we should have some enhanced, and I say enhanced, maybe more base paint markings on the road. Not suggesting we need to go to the extreme as we see in the cities, as such as the city of Ottawa, where they have green lanes all over the place. But I think sporadically we should be identifying some pavement markings. I think we should have some proper signage to enhance that cyclist movement through our county system as well. And if you look at the waterfront trail, actually goes from local roads to county roads back to local roads. So we know that, on some of the local or on the local roads, we should be responsible for that. But I think what we really need, and I'm hoping to get some support, is fruitful discussion on what does that framework look like in terms of what we should be providing on our county road system in terms of paint markings. We believe that the county should help fund some paint markings and signage throughout. We believe that we should have some consistency right from South Dundas through South Stormont to North Dundas and all the various roadway systems. So then that way, if we do want to, or the county or the different municipalities want to enhance, at least there's a framework there that we can go off of. And I think it should be driven by the counties along with our local municipalities as well. And again, it's just to have some consistency. And we do believe that some of the base work should be funded through the counties. And then anything that's enhanced should be a local cost. I mean, I mean, again, with 15,000 cyclists going through our county system, we want to attract, we want to stop, we want to get them to shop locally, eat locally, and not just kind of stop and keep on going sort of deal. So I think there is a responsibility at a county level. I would like to see us have more discussions through the next couple months on, again, the pavement markings, the signage, and these enhanced features. Over the next 2 or 3 months, and potentially when it comes to budget, maybe we do allocate some funds towards that program. So that'd be my opinion. Thank you.
Okay. Also, we're going to need to keep an eye out on the provincial government's decided that they want to have a say on bike lanes if we're going to designate them. So that's something we're going to have to look at that legislation, see what's coming forward. I'm going to go with Councillor Gaydon, then Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Through you, first, I just want to thank Ben and his staff at the counties for working with the township to try to address some short and long-term solutions at that pinch point on Hoople Creek. And I'm really hopeful that this table will be supportive of putting some funds aside so we can look for some solutions on that project. And I also wanted to just indicate that I agree with Councillor St. Pierre that I'd like to have a more fulsome discussion about the county roads generally outside of just that pinch point. But I do agree with what Ben's recommending, and I do agree with what Councillor St. Pierre mentioned.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Yeah, obviously, we need to take some steps, both locally and at the county, in order to improve cycling safety on our roads. I quite agree, but I do think that we should move cautiously on this. It stands to create a number of precedents, and I'm not sure about a few things. Like, yeah, I mean, painting all of our county shoulders, thank you, green, for example, just doesn't sound like a good idea to me. However, denoting the fact that they are being used by cyclists makes sense, so that motorists are aware that there will be cyclists there. I'm a little bit concerned about designating them exclusively for cyclists because I see people jogging along our shoulders often. I see people walking along those shoulders. How do you manage, who owns the road then, right? Are we going to have, joggers jumping out of the way when a cyclist comes? When these are things we need to understand before we make any permanent moves here. And then there's farm machinery. They use our county roads all the time, and so we need to know that there isn't going to be a conflict there, because our agricultural community needs to be able to have access to those spaces. So I agree. I think we need some more discussion, and we do need to take some steps. But I think we need to be careful about just going full bore here because it could have some consequences. Thank you.
Thank you. Good points. Councillor St. Pierre, then Councillor McDonald, then Councillor McGillis.
Yeah, thank you, Warden, and I agree with you, Councillor. I think that's why I'm proposing that we create and have that local discussion with the counties so we can get this framework correct. The OPP probably should be brought into this as well. Personal experience a handful of years ago is my wife was walking on the shoulder of a local road, got clipped by a cyclist, a local, and it was, he actually reported her that she was in the wrong, and it actually turned out that the pedestrian was in the right because it wasn't properly marked as a cycle track, so they're supposed to go onto the road and then come back in. So I 100% agree. We just need to get this right on all levels. So again, I think the framework needs to be there in terms of what we want to see, how we want to see it, and the funding involved and who's going to pay for what. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Warden, and through you. As somebody who bikes his niece and nephew on County Road 17 into Lancaster sometimes, I'm not overly concerned with bike safety. Well, I am concerned with bike safety, but I find the hardest part to this would be, especially with bikes, wider shoulders means wider, or would be faster cars likely, because our roads are designed. So if we were to do something where, in like the case of that bridge, I think that's an excellent thing to study, because there are many pinch points. I think like Dead Man's Turn for us, or like anywhere where you have an old bridge. But there would be financial ramifications to widening a road at every bridge to accommodate cycling, because we probably have hundreds of bridges or culverts that cross that would pinch. I don't know if this is as much, and I'm curious as to the North's perception on this, because in South Glengarry, or all our souths, we have the waterfront, and that's a big trail. I don't know if people are biking County Road 43, 18 to the same extent. So I'm curious as to that, and that leads me to think that my perception, it can be changed, would be that it would be a local municipality's way, because I don't want to burden the North with a southern issue. And I do worry a little bit, because more bikes would lead to more accidents, quite likely, because it's a volume thing. If we make better paths, and it's more so the proximity to cars. So this is like really a car issue when I think of it. So cars close to bikes result in bikers getting hurt. Bikes apparently with walkers mean walkers get hurt. Like the bigger vehicle will always hurt the smaller vehicle. So we have to be thoughtful that bikes and cars can coexist, but them coexisting side by side increases the chance of a tragedy. And that is, we haven't had a tragedy, nor do we have a cycling club in our recent thing to drive like our issue. But I very much feel for that family, because, or even the community of that family, because cars and bikes existing together works mostly, but when it doesn't, it favors the car. And I think more bikes, it's something we have to be very cautious for. So there's examples in like Arkansas and North Carolina where they have bikes, like road, sidewalk, bicycle path on the other side, and I admire South Stormont for their bike path, and also some of South Dundas. All of ours is mostly on the road, and we do have a lot of Quebec traffic, so I've seen many of those. My road in particular probably sees 20 to 40 bicyclers every Saturday, Sunday. It's a slower road, and I just don't want to miss things. And we need to encourage as much as we can. Like, I forget who said it, is they take the quickest way rather than the safest way. And as you have the parkway, as much as it takes sometimes we may need to like tell people, hey, go 20 minutes early on your cycling route, take the safe road. But that's all governing behavior, and we can't really do that. And I'm at risk of a ramble, I believe, so thank you for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Trump. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
May I just, because I believe I've spoken in facts. I have not created any false truths. And I hopefully have not insulted a numerous amount of individuals in doing that, because he does have a base. If I may just add one more thing, Mike, to go slightly Trump with you, then, like, I was told I was one of the best cyclists at Bishop's going down the Massawippi. That's what people say.
I've heard there's nobody better than you.
Yeah, there's nobody better than you. But that bicycle path was a former railway bed, and I very much enjoyed it, and there was a very active community, but it's separate from cars, and that's my big thing. Bicycles and cars, I'm a big cycling component. If we can move cars away from cycling, good, and if more people cycle, less healthcare costs, I mean, I'm good for that too.
Great, thank you. Councillor McGillis.
Thank you very much, through you, Mr. Warden. I think the premise here is looking at what the best alternative is in terms of the safety. We see, you were talking about a bicycle possibly hitting a pedestrian, but what's worse is a car hitting a bicyclist or a pedestrian. So when you look at changing the color of the lines, I think that might be a good idea, but we're going to be doing that in a way where we're doing traffic counts and bicycle counts and everything like that. So what we're going to do is hopefully address those areas first. When you look at the city of Cornwall, they have 2 lines with a picture of a bicycle. They just repaved the number 2, where you see that, and plus there's a bicycle path right next to it, which is kind of scratches my head to see a bicycle path when you got that. But at least they have the extra places where the bicycles and the people can walk. But I think it's important that we maybe be consistent with our neighbors too as well, so that it's not confusing for the traffic, the people driving, and seeing all of a sudden 2 lines and then 1 colored line. Things like that we have to take into consideration. But number 1 is a safety priority, and that's what we're looking at here. And we're looking at a short-term solutions, and I think we're slowly getting there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McGillis, and we'll take 2 more. It'll be Councillor Densham and then Councillor Fraser.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. And actually, very, very good report. I appreciated the detail and the options being outlaid in this. And again, I think Councillor Williams and I are on the same page in terms of precedent setting and looking at this. To me, and I agree as well with the fact that safety has to be considered, and I would hope that when the bridge was developed, that was also considered. And as we look to replace that bridge at some point in the future, we can look at options to make things even more safe. But from my perspective, this the fact is, many times when we look at an initiative like this, it opens the door to other initiatives that other municipalities may have on very different topics, but to the point of precedent, it can create a precedent. So I see this fundamentally, other than the immediate safety issue, I see this as kind of a local initiative. And I do support some modest support in terms of funding at the county's level, but fundamentally this is a local initiative as I see it, and that's the way I would expect to be treated should we have a different initiative at our own local level. I know that the county's staff do a fantastic job of partnering and providing expertise and supporting some work, and again, I would encourage them to continue to do that. If we're looking at a bigger term solution in terms of tourism, I mean, we have a tourism branch as well, where if we're looking to make some radical changes there, then I think that's to some degree already covered within the scope of what counties does under the tourism umbrella. So again, open to some modest support at the county's level, but fundamentally I'm kind of seeing this as a municipal initiative with the support as the county staff are so well at providing as needed.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Fraser.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, through you. You may not recognize it, but I do like the cycle, and I've been off the seat for a few years. But I think quickly, I'll try to be quick, Mr. Warden. A number of years ago, my wife and I were on a holiday overseas in another country, obviously, in Spain. And we were 1 week in Spain on roads that would be akin to number 2. Sometimes there were 4-lane roads that we were on. And the sense of comfort that we had doing that was incredible. And I say that because getting ready for that trip, and that was a 1-week trip, and the first day was 60K through an area that we'd we'd never been to before, so we were unaware of the landscape, of the culture, of the mindset. We were preparing for that trip, and St. Lawrence Street in Winchester was dangerous, was not comfortable to be going up and down with the number of cars on the street, the number of farm implements going up and down the street, the tightness of the roadway. But yet we'd go to Europe and travel on 4-lane roads as a cyclist, not in a cycling lane, but as a member of the road-using community. And the story I would relate other areas, and I'll tell the story here. We were traveling on a road similar to Highway 31 one day, and you could hear behind us transport trucks gearing down, waiting for a break in oncoming traffic to signal and to pull out and pass us as if we were a vehicle. Complete level of comfort and understanding that we were allowed on the road, and we weren't on the shoulder, we were on the road. That comes through education and culture, and that's what my first point is I want to talk about is the education. I do think that I look at Mr. Warden, I think that we need to have someone educate us as to the brief education we received from Mr. Hahn about the cyclist is allowed to take their right of way on the road, to stay to the right side. I took a course, I sat in a seminar, and I apologize, sat in a seminar, and the OPP that looked after the bicycle safety was saying, you have 1 meter of the road. Take that. You're allowed that. He was not an advocate of using the shoulder because the shoulder is where the dead raccoons and the skunks all roll off to, gravel ends up on, and if you have to swerve when you're on that dirty shoulder, you have a choice of swerving and falling into the ditch or swerving into traffic. So stay on the clean portion of the road, take your lane, be mindful that you are a smaller vehicle on the road, and be careful. I look forward to maybe having a delegation from other areas or information come from other areas where they have instituted bike safety, and they do have bike lanes, and they do have those communities that have lots of cyclists. I'd like to hear what they've done to ensure the safety of their cyclists. The OPP, there is someone that delivers bicycle safety tips and best practices. It'd be nice to hear from them. This initiative needs to take place. This community, as Councillor St. Pierre mentions, 15,000 cyclists traveling through the counties. If this becomes a more bicycle-friendly community in SDG, 15,000 will become a small number of cyclists that come through. I think of the Blue Mountain experiment. One fellow was an avid cyclist. He convinced council that they need to become a bicycle-friendly community. Blue Mountain is busy every weekend with cyclists. Their bed and breakfasts are busy, their accommodations are full, their restaurants are full. It is an active community, and because they educated themselves and the residents that it's important, and it should happen. It's a tragedy. It's too bad that a tragedy such as took place. So Stormont needs to spur this conversation on, but I do believe that we need to spur it on, and I think that pinch point and those things need to be addressed before someone says, how come we didn't do something after recognizing that there are issues. Thank you, Mr. Warden.
Thanks. Great points. Do you know what you're...
Yeah, maybe if I may, through you, Mr. Warden, just briefly, kind of heard a lot of good feedback. What my takeaway from this discussion today is to reach out to others, as well as recreation and probably public works staff from local municipalities, just to start that discussion of kind of what, like working together, what does it look like in terms of county versus local responsibility, what we'll call it like base level of cycling infrastructure. When I talk about like cycling infrastructure standards we want to establish, and then come back to council, and then we can have that perhaps that more fundamental discussion of whose ultimate, are you going to say, responsibility. And I don't want to make it sound like a county versus local municipality. I can certainly appreciate the struggles that occur financially and otherwise in the local municipalities, and want to make it collaborative and very kind of, this is what it is, here's the recommendation, and then hopefully we can move forward with that. But I think I've got enough information here to be able to continue to work on this file, so thank you very much.
Yeah, excuse me. I think other than a few safety zones that we have issues that we have right now, is for us to kind of take our time and do this right, and ensure that this is something that we're not trying to get done for. We got to have it for next summer. It could happen by next summer, but it's something that that is going to be for a long time. So let's just do it right. It's my opinion. So, okay, everyone else good? Okay, perfect. Committee of the Whole, November 18th. Ben.
Yeah, I guess I'll just look for council's feedback if that's something they want to have to discuss the two items I identify in the report, which is specifically the road rationalization review that we've been working on with local public works staff, as well as the having a discussion on driveway spacing policies in the county official plan.
So I'll speak on, I'm dying to have that conversation on the entrance permits, but just going to go around. Everyone good to have a committee of the whole for both those items? Okay, awesome. That's good. Martintown Bridge. Wow, you just really took over this whole meeting, didn't you, Ben? Go ahead.
Yeah, not too much to discuss here. I had kind of showed a sample at our last meeting what that duct looked like, and work's all done. And if you've driven by, you'll see that all that duct work is now underneath a bunch of steel in the sidewalk at the bridge.
Questions? Okay, seeing none. Joint application with Township of North Glengarry, Housing Enabling Core Servicing Stream. Ben.
Thank you. Last one, and I'll be brief on this one. I just wanted to bring to Council's attention that Township of North Glengarry was looking at the Housing Enabling Core Servicing Stream, and have a number of actually had quite an exciting. They've got quite an exciting development that's looking to take place just north of County Road 43, across from the Glengarry Hospital. And one of the things that the municipal staff, and I really appreciate working with Tim, and he deserves all the credit here, was identifying was that there is some opportunity through this stream to actually move forward with one of the long-term recommendations that was identified in the Alexandria Environmental Assessment, Main Street Environmental Assessment, which was essentially to complete a true bypass around Alexandria to remove the commercial through truck traffic right out of the downtown core altogether and make it a lot easier. So what the EA had identified was essentially extending County Road 45 north on a local municipal road and then turning it onto a closed. It's an unopened road allowance, which then crosses the via tracks, connects back to County Road 34 at Power Dam. Yes, Power Dam. Yep. And what that does is it actually, in doing that, it actually opens up development opportunities and supports that development that's being proposed north of 43. So a lot of real exciting opportunity through that. It's a project, an application that North Glengarry has proposed to lead. They're preparing all the documents for it, and then ultimately the county will have a role in this project if we are successful. But it fits with enabling housing. It fits with expanding, enabling housing not only for this development but for future development. Some really interesting opportunity with the rail crossing, because that's part of the high frequency line that the federal government is very interested, the Quebec City to Windsor corridor. So that's right on that corridor. So opportunity there just to make sure we put in the right kind of infrastructure right away. And so a lot of great things here. So that's we just want to bring it to council's attention, make sure council's aware. Obviously, there's no commitment at this point. No need. I just didn't want this to be a surprise if we came back and said, hey, guess what? We had some funding. So that's what the purpose of this report was for.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I mean, getting that bypass finished and complete would be a dream come true for Alexandria, to get those trucks off of the main street. And ultimately, yes, that was part of the environmental assessment, but it was kind of like just a pipe dream at the time. And this actually could make it a reality. Now, I know that this is going to come, if the application was successful, it would come with some significant investment on behalf of both North Glengarry and the county in order to be able to make it happen, because it would be 50% funding. So the only reason why I'm not kind of jumping up and down with excitement is because with that required other investment, my concern is that it would derail the Alexandria Main Street project, because we know that the Alexandria Main Street project has probably been shelved a little bit because of trying to manage the County Road 22 redevelopment there. And I really wouldn't like to, the Main Street is a priority. It needs to get done. It needs to get finished, or at least started. and so I wouldn't want the bypass project to take precedence over the Main Street and then derail it, and we're looking at another 10 years before it can get done. So do you have any thoughts on that?
I will be honest, I think your concerns are very valid. It is a very valid concern. We have a certain amount of funding available to us to invest in projects, and the challenge is the funding right now that we see out through the provincial government is geared towards housing enabling type of projects, which let's be honest, Main Street does not. Like it's a local road improvement, it's a road improvement, excuse me, not local road, but it's an important road, but it's not something that ticks any of the boxes that the funding qualifies for. And I'll be honest with you too, like we were looking at, can we actually get some funding for County Road 22, like apply at the county level for this? And we actually couldn't connect those boxes either, or check those boxes either, and it's unfortunate. So from the county's perspective, as we kind of check through our list of all the projects that we have, big projects that require money, this is actually probably the best opportunity. So your comments are very valid, and I don't know, there's nothing I could say to satisfy or alleviate those concerns. I think it's a very valid concern. I think the benefit is that our costs for this type of project, if we do get funding, and we do get the funding at the level that we would hope to get, is that it's a project that we can execute and fund very, very quickly. And that is to our benefit. So it doesn't delay it by 10 years. It actually might only push it off a year. But that's the best answer I can give you on that one.
Former county engineer DJ McDonald would be extremely excited about this project.
Thank you, Mr.
You may.
Warden. He would be, because he believed that residential growth should be in the hamlet areas. So in that way, I think Alexandria is probably our biggest community in SDNG, if not Winchester. So like growth in those areas has always been away from ribbon development. So I've been raised in that if we're going to do development, it should be in those areas. As much as I do like my South Glengarry development, it makes sense in Alexandria.
Like father, like son. Councillor Fraser.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I do look forward to, and I always appreciate hearing about the efforts that are needed in North Glengarry and North County Road 22 North Stormont and the Alexandria Main Street project and this project that is being considered. I do appreciate hearing about them, because I know in North Dundas we have a challenge, and we looked at that challenge, and we're facing that challenge by ourselves. We've removed 100 tractor-trailer trips, a minimum 100 tractor-trailer trips through our downtown core, and we are we are beseeching the province to recognize that industry is important, and removing 100 tractor-trailer trips from the downtown core of Winchester is important. It falls on deaf ears. Let me say it falls on deaf ears, but I look forward to a project like this taking place. I know it's important for all of SDG, as the former mayor would say, high tides raise all ships, and I will keep speaking about the needs of North Dundas and Liscombe Road and tractor trailers, and in a few short years, 55 million kilograms of cheese will be traveling up and down that road, as opposed to the 44 million kilograms of cheese that are traveling up and down Liscombe Road, as opposed to traveling in and out, and the milk that's required to do that. So we all do face these challenges, and it'd be nice if we could come together in a more aggressive fashion and have the province recognize that industry and housing is important in Eastern Ontario, and especially in SDG, and ensure we get these projects funded in a proper way.
Thanks for your comments. Any further questions or comments on this? Seeing none, thank you, Ben. SDG Tourism Strategic Plan Update, Peter and Karina.
So good morning, Council. We're excited to be here to give you an update on the Tourism Strategic Plan. I'm going to pass it over to Corey Hagan. So he's the Acting Tourism Coordinator.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Good morning. This report serves to update Council on the progress of the Tourism Strategic Plan, budgeted for 2024. SDG Tourism, with support from Cornwall, have engaged Alphabet Creative, Brain Trust, and CMK Consulting to develop a comprehensive strategy aimed at guiding tourism development in our region. So with respect to funding, SDG Counties has successfully secured $25,000 in funding from the Tourism Development Fund, which will cover 50% of the project costs. The remaining costs will be split between SDG Counties and the City of Cornwall. So our project is made up of 4 phases. The first phase, including research and analysis, which occurred between September and October. Currently, we're in our second phase, the consultations and workshops. So this consists of one-on-one interviews as well as 3 visioning sessions, which you can also find as part of the key information report. Basically, what these are made up of currently is the visioning sessions in particular. We've reached out to the communities. We currently have ads in the newspapers. It's blasted on social media. We basically want to work with our communities, with anyone who lives here, business owners, any type of organization, and get everyone's input on that. Phase 3, coming up in November, will be draft strategy development. And then finally, our final strategy coming in February 2025, which is the delivery of said strategy and roadmap for implementation. So our key outcomes for this, so the strategic and collaborative approach will look at tourism development through a regional lens, and will achieve the following: a clear vision and mission statement from our organization, demonstration of tourism value to local communities and interest holders, identification of key opportunities, and a detailed plan of action to assist organizations and interest holders in implementation. Additionally, the plan will serve as a comprehensive roadmap that positions SDG counties and Cornwall as a premier destination, offering unique year-round experiences. And that's pretty much what we have today for.
Okay, thank you, Corey. Questions or comments at this point? Go ahead. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Just a quick comment. I'm really glad to see you doing a public consultation on this and getting the input of the broader community. I think it'll always benefit your strategy in order to be able to serve what the public out there see as needs. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you very much for your report.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, moving on to 11.7, administrative update. CAO Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. So just a couple of key dates coming up. I've indicated council meetings, but we also have on November the 2nd, which I didn't include on here, our session here at County Council Chambers to go over funding that we want to provide to community organizations from a social programming perspective, where we think there's gaps in provincial funding and funding that's available for these organizations. So that's planned for November the 2nd, starts at 9 a.m. We will have refreshments and food here for people as they work through part of that meeting. Again, it will be facilitated by Suzanne Gibson. And we're also going to have a few guests join us. So we have invited Social Development Council and the United Way to come in at the very beginning to do a brief presentation on where they see there's potentially some gaps in programming. And then also we're going to have both Melissa Morgan and Lisa Smith from the City of Cornwall that will join us that day, just in case council has any questions, probably more so as it relates to the history of funding and where maybe some of the programs have changed or have fallen off of provincial programs. So that is planned for November the 2nd. We hope to have everybody wrapped up and out of here by 1 p.m. So looking forward to that. And then we have a couple of council meetings. Our inaugural meeting is December the 13th, so we look forward to that. And we have budget meetings planned for the first week of December on December 3rd, and an additional date on the 4th if required.
Okay, any questions on that portion of the report? Seeing none, we'll move on to the wonderful news from the OPP.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. So we received 2 weeks ago our OPP annual billing statement, and we did discuss this briefly at our last Police Services Board meeting. So in 2024, our police services budget was just under 9.9 million, and the billing statement that we've received for 2025 is a little over 12 million. So overall, what is required to fund between the deficit and the change in the budget, that's an increase of 21.5%. And if we just look at budget year over year, that's in excess of a 14% increase. I will also caution council, I think that if there's that significant of a deficit from 2023, I would anticipate we're going to see a similar deficit in 2024 because the budgets haven't really changed from 2023 to 2024. We did just late in the day on Friday receive an update on I think a webinar or a virtual meeting that we'll be able to attend to gather more information on what is impacting the budgets. But I think that we wanted to just highlight this for county council as we head into budget conversations. This is a fairly significant increase. It is throughout Ontario. We have seen similar increases in other local municipalities as well. It was a topic of discussion recently at the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus, but really just on the heels of receiving the information. I think part of our concern or a little bit of our frustration is just more so it's a fairly significant increase without any heads up or warning that we were going to see such a change in this budget year. But after we attend that session, if there's updates, we will provide those updates to County Council.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments? Go ahead, Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Warden. And this is, at our local council, we often have conversations about just throwing something out, so I hope I don't get judged this as an idea or a stream of consciousness. In speaking to the mayor of Tweed, they had the OPP contracts go up, and this was a previous negotiation quite a bit, and they had talked about moving to the city of Peterborough's police officers. So in this case, I'm not saying the city of Cornwall could provide the service, but they are another policing provider, and it's something that, if this continues, it's something that should at least be minorly investigated. I'm satisfied with the OPP. They do a good job. And I imagine the city of Cornwall also does a good job. It's just whenever one provider, we have two. So it's something that it could be that regional approach. Just something to plant a seed of an idea. It may never come to fruition, but at 2.4% in 1 year, I don't know what the equivalent would be from the city of Cornwall, but it's something to think about.
So, yeah, this was something that was considered back in the day, and I think it's mostly coming from the city of Cornwall towards the OPP. And if you'll have read in the paper in the last couple of weeks, that was also brought up at the Police Services Board, and they declined to get a pricing from the OPP and stick with what they had. So, Councillor Densham.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and through you. So I've read the report, and I guess what I'm struggling is to understand what the driver is in the numbers. Like I've gone through, and it looks like, so there's a few things, and I can speculate on this. I mean, they've identified the 5% increase in salaries, but that doesn't make up the 21%. It looks like some of their calculations is based on historic averages, and maybe COVID drove down the average, and now that's coming out of the 4 average, maybe that's what's driving it. I guess what I'd really love to understand is what are the fundamental drivers that are creating the 20% so that we can set our expectations? To your point, Madam CAO, we're looking at potentially another deficit for the coming years, but what we want to do is get on the right trend, right? We want to recognize what the true cost is. I don't begrudge any of the money we spend on the policing. I think it's money well spent, and I think as we discussed around the bike lanes, safety is important, and they play a very, very key role in our community. But what I want to try to do is get a better understanding of what's driving the number, what's driving the average, so that we can go in eyes open into future years.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Sia.
Perhaps if I could provide some general comments. So I think we're hoping to get that information at this session that we have been invited to. I do believe that there is a lack of sufficient resources in policing resources across the province, and I think it also might be similar in the city of Cornwall. And then we have officers off or off on leave. Then we're bringing in officers at overtime rates to make up those shifts. So I think there's a bit of a resource shortfall, but I think we're hoping on this call, I think we're hoping to get a little bit of better information, and then we can certainly share that with County Council.
Okay, Councillor Gano.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I just want to say I agree with both Councillors Densham and Councillor McDonald. I do think we need to determine what's the driving driving cause as to what's causing these increases year by year. But with that being said, if this is something that we're going to expect going up year by year, I think it'd be prudent to start having those conversations and looking at whether there are any alternative options. It's hard to bargain when you're the smaller party and they know that there's no other options available. So maybe it would be a good idea to open up a dialogue with the City of Cornwall or elsewhere and see what else we can do.
Yeah, I can just say that for, sitting on the Police Services Board, truthfully, we have zero say in anything. We see the budget. We got this, October 10th for 2023. So we're very much kept in the dark about these kinds of things. I mean, it's good for us to have a conversation with the OPP on stuff that's happening locally, but as far as budgets, we have zero say into it. So go ahead, Councillor McDonald.
And through you, Mr. Warden, this is just a clarification, just so you had mentioned that in the Police Services Board that did you say the OPP had said they're not interested? You made a comment to answer my question, and I didn't understand it. So you had said your service on the Police Service Board, the OPP or the City of Cornwall had reached out, and
the City of Cornwall had reached out prior before this, is a number of years ago, and they had a quick discussion about it, and it wasn't supported by. I'm not sure if it was council or the police service, but I think it was council, and they just wasn't something they were gonna.
And that was the OPP doing the City of Cornwall?
That's right.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure if I'm going to read something, I'm not
Correct.
going down a bad path. Thank you.
Correct. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you for your report. And we will move into closed session.
It's moved by Councillor Densham, seconded by Councillor Williams, the council proceeding camera pursuant to Section 239(2)(c) of the Municipal Act 2001, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board for a purchase and sale matter.
All those in favor? Motion is carried. Convene?
It's moved by Councillor Williams, seconded by Councillor Fraser, that council rise and reconvene in open session without reporting.
All those in favor? Motion is carried, none opposed. Ratification bylaw.
Moved by Councillor Fraser, seconded by Councillor Williams, that bylaw number 5468, being a bylaw to adopt, confirm, and ratify matters dealt with by resolution, be read and passed in open council, signed and sealed.
All those in favor? Motion is carried, none opposed. Adjournment by resolution.
It's moved by Councillor Williams, seconded by Councillor Laundrie, that council adjourn to the call of the chair.
All those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you, everyone, getting through that meeting, and hopefully you can enjoy the next couple days. It's going to be beautiful out. I mean, if anybody hears a farmer whining, Martin, because I had to listen to him all the way back from Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus, get your crops in. Thank you, everyone.